it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to knit a scarf for the absolute beginner. If you've never knitted anything before, I'm going to walk you through this entire project step by step. This is a very easy scarf to make. We're going to be using self-striping yarn, so we're not even going to have to switch colors. The yarn is going to do all the work for us, and we're just going to be using a simple knit stitch. So I'm going to show you how to cast on, how to knit the knit stitches used to make the scarf, and then how to bind off your stitches and weave in the ends. So the finished scarf measures about 60 inches long and about 6.5 inches wide. So you can make your scarf longer or shorter. If you're making this for a child, obviously you want to make it shorter. If you're making something for someone who's very tall, you want to make yours longer, of course. I like to go by the hip to hip. I don't know if that's what it's technically called, but I like to start at the hip, go around the back of the neck, and back down to the hip. That's a good place to start. If you want to wrap the scarf around your neck several times, you'll want to make yours longer. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a ruler or tape measure is helpful so you can kind of measure as you go along while you're working. The knitting needles I'm going to be using are a 6mm US 10 knitting needle. Now these are really cute and fun for beginners. They are made by Lion Brand Yarn. And they are marketed as kids knitting needles, but I think they're so perfect for any beginner knitting needle. They are on the shorter side, so they're not going to get caught up in much while you're working. They are plastic, so they're not as slippery as metal needles. And the other thing that's really great about these being beginner needles is that they're different colors. So you have a blue one and a red one. I'm not sure if they still make them anymore. I did a video review of these a while back. But when you knit, you pass the work from one needle to the other, so it's helpful for them to be a different color when you're just starting out. Another great type of knitting needle that I love for beginner projects are bamboo needles. Those work really nicely and the yarn and stitches kind of stay put while you're working. So experiment with different knitting needles as you're starting out to see which one you like best. If you have a favorite knitting needle, please share it below so all of you who are starting out can see what everyone else uses as well. The yarn that I'm going to be using is called Bernat Pop. I'm going to be using a colorway called Full Spectrum. It's like shades of blues, greens, pink, this bright pink, this like gold color. To me it looks really fallish, so I thought it would be nice. And each one of these is, let's see, 280 yards. And if you need to substitute yarn, look for something that's a 4 on the yarn weight scale, a medium. Now this Bernat Pop does recommend a US 8 knitting needle. I'm going to be using a US 10. I went up a needle size, or a millimeter rather. This is a 5mm that it recommends. I'm using a 6mm. I just want my scarf to have a little bit more drape to it. So it's going to kind of open up the stitches, but you could use either one, would be fine. You might want to experiment a little bit as well. And this is one of those popular cake yarns. So we're going to be doing the center pull ball of yarn for that. Okay, to begin, we're just going to grab one of our knitting needles and put the other one aside for now. We're going to do our stitches. We're going to put them on our needle using the long tail cast on. Now, if you've never knitted before, this is a really easy, basic cast on. If you know how to knit and you prefer a different cast on method, please feel free to do that alternatively as well. So what we need to do is sort of estimate. So I'm going to do like an arm length of yarn as our tail, our long tail. And then we can kind of put that towards ourselves. And then the other yarn, the other end, is called the working yarn. That's the yarn that we'll be feeding into the project, the yarn that is attached to the yarn ball. So what we need to do is put a slip knot onto our needle. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind that loop, reach in with your knitting needle, bring up the loop, and tighten. I picked the red needle so we could see a lot of contrast here. So what we're going to do is cast on our stitches. We're going to do 24 stitches for our scarf. Now, we have no special stitch count, so if you want your scarf to be wider, simply cast on more stitches at this point. If you want a narrower scarf, do less stitches, okay? So what we need to do is hold our needle kind of up a little bit, and it's going to make like an upside down V, just like that. Now come in from the back here with your index finger and your thumb, and then grab the yarn at the bottom with your pinky, and then open up your index finger and your thumb. See how I made like a diamond shape, Let's do that one more time. Holding the needle up like this, come in from behind here, reach in with your index finger and your thumb, grab the bottom with your pinky, open it up to make that diamond shape, okay? Now grab your knitting needle with your right hand and come up under your thumb, go around your finger, and then come through that thumb loop, okay? Now the slip knot that we did was our first stitch, so we just cast on stitch number 2. Let's do that one more time. Come in from behind with your index finger and your thumb, grab the bottom to make that diamond. Now come up under your thumb, go around and under that finger like that, and through the thumb loop. That's 3, okay? I'm gonna pick up speed now, but if you need to see this very slowly a few more times, just back up the video a little bit, okay? So let's do, again, 24 stitches. So that's 3, under, around, through, under, around, through, under, around, through, under, around, and through that thumb loop. 2, 4, 6, 7 stitches so far. So we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We can push these back if we need to. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, push them back, and 24. So here is our cast on stitches, and we still have this long tail. If you want to, what I usually do is trim it just so you have about 6 inches. This will be plenty of space to get that end woven in later, but you don't need all that excess. It'll just kind of get in the way. Okay, let's begin row 1. Row 1 is the row we will repeat for the entire project, okay? This is just a really simple scarf using just knit stitches. If you guys want to see something more intricate or complicated with knitting, I know a lot of you have been asking for beginner knitting projects. If you want to learn some more stitches, I do have a knitting stitch library as a playlist on the YouTube channel. And if you have any special requests, just let me know and we'll make a video for that as well. Okay, so I have my needle with my cast on stitches in my left hand, and I just grabbed my other needle with my right hand. Now you can kind of see how these color-coded needles are going to be helpful, but not necessary. You know, you'll pick it up quick enough. All right, so we can slide our stitches up a little bit if we need to. So take the needle, the empty needle, in your right hand. Now what we're going to do, remember the working yarn is attached to our yarn ball. So come up under that first stitch. So our blue needle is on the bottom. Wrap the yarn around the bottom needle. Now bring the needle from back to front. But while we do that, we're going to catch that loop. So I caught that loop there. That's the stitch. And then push it off. Okay? So once again, come up under with the blue needle or the needle on the right. Let me just tighten that up a little bit. Wrap the yarn around the bottom needle only. Now we're going to slide the needle from back to front, catching that little loop there as we see it, okay? Come up under, wrap the yarn around the bottom needle, slide it from the back to the front, and there's our stitch, and then push it off, okay? Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of speed. Again, if you want to see this in slow motion, just back the video up a little bit, okay? So wrap the yarn around and knit. Up under, around, bring it back to front. Up under, around, bring it from back to front, push it off. Up under, around, bring it from back to front, push it off. And we're just going to do this all the way across. Now, a lot of times beginner knitters will make things a little bit tight. I did the same thing and I had the worst time trying to knit my first row. So as you cast on and knit that first row, try to keep your hands relaxed and nice and loose. And that will keep your work from being too tight to work with. As a side note, a little hint I can give you is remember when we did the long tail cast on where we cast on all the stitches here? Go up a needle size just to cast on and then you can go back to your regular size when you start to work the rest of your project. Okay, so I'm just knitting those last few stitches. And again, this is what we're going to be doing for the whole scarf. Now, this is a self-striping yarn that I'm using, so changing colors is going to be a total breeze, okay? So we just finished our row. I knit that very last stitch, and row 1 is complete. Now to finish your scarf, you're just going to be repeating row 1 over and over and over. But I'm going to show you how to switch hands and start up that next row. So if you need to see row 1 again, just back up the video a little bit. So what we're going to do, sometimes you need to slide your stitches up a little bit. Don't do that too much or they could kind of pop off. So did you notice I took the blue needle and I put it in my left hand? I'm going to get a little bit of yarn to get us started. And now the red needle is in my right hand and it's empty. So I passed my work from one needle to the other. So once again, we're going to do the same thing. Come up under, wrap the yarn, bring it from back to front and push it off. We're just going to be doing this all the way across. This is a wonderfully relaxing, super duper easy project that you can really master the beautiful art of knitting, which I learned how to knit before I learned how to crochet. So it's really fun to be able to be teaching you how to do this because it's really wonderful and relaxing. And when you knit for a long time and you get a lot of practice in, these really basic stitches you can do without even looking. So you can watch a movie or do whatever. But in the meantime, just focus on getting everything in the right spot and the speed will come. It'll definitely come in no time. And actually, even though I did learn how to knit first, I'm notoriously slow knitter. So I'm a little faster at crochet. So we're just, again, we're just working row 1 over and over and over until we get to the end of the row. Okay, so let's continue working row 1 and then we'll rejoin in just a moment and I'm going to show you how to do a couple things. I'm going to show you how to bind off. So once you're done knitting and you've used up all your yarn, then what do you do with all of these stitches? They're just still sitting on your needle. So I'm going to show you how to bind off and then we're going to learn how to deal with these ends. Okay, so I kept going with my rows and all of the colors have really played out beautifully. There's this bright blue and this olive green and this kind of gold copper color. So anyway, now we're ready to cast off our project. Now you want to make sure you have a little bit of yarn to enable you to do that because you really need to knit one more row as your cast off row. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cast off and then we're going to weave the ends in and then our project will be finished. Okay, so casting off is super easy. All we're going to do is, we can slide our project up a little bit, is we're going to knit a stitch, the same way we normally would, and then we're going to knit another stitch. And then what you're going to do is reach back with your left needle and go into that first loop, that first stitch you made, and go in there with your needle and bring it up over top of the other stitch and off the needle. Okay, now repeat that again. Knit another stitch. Now take that other needle, pick that up, lift it up over top of the other stitch and off the needle. And then we're just going to do this all the way across. Okay, lift it up, over and off, knit a stitch, take your left needle, lift up, over and off. Now, if you have a preferred way that you like to cast off, obviously feel free to do that. This is a really easy beginner way to do it. Okay, and we're just doing that all the way across. So knit a stitch, and then take your left needle, lift it up, over and off, and then just do that all the way across. And if we stop for just a moment, we can see that part of our scarf has already come off the needle. Okay, so we're just gonna continue across, casting off our scarf here. Lift it up, over and off, knit a stitch, lift it up, over and off. And we're just doing this all the way across. And as you can see, you'll need a little bit of yarn to get you through. I saved more than enough yarn, probably too much. I probably could have put a few more rows in before I cast off, but I really do like the length that I got and the colors, how they played out. Okay, we are moving right along with our scarf. Lift it up, over and off. Knit another stitch. Lift it up, over and off. Up, over and off. You can see too that casting off this way gives a nice neat edge as well. Okay, just a few stitches left to go. And this is a really fun, if you're learning how to knit, this is a really nice gift scarf as well. If you want to give this to someone and show them that you've learned how to knit, this is a wonderful gift idea. Super easy, you don't have to size it in particular for anyone. And we're on our last stitch, so we're just gonna knit that one as well and do the same thing. Lift it up, over and off. Now we can put this needle aside and we have just one stitch left. So what we can do now is take our scissors and cut the yarn, leaving, I have about 8 inches there. And now we're finished with that yarn. If you have some scrap yarn like I do, save it for those kind of leftover yarn projects or small projects. You can also use it to stuff decorative pillows or amigurumi, something like that. But I always save my yarn remnants like this. Okay, so next what we want to do is kind of wiggle your needle so it creates a larger loop. And then you can just take the yarn end and send it through that loop and then tighten it down nice and snug all the way to the bottom, as far as you can get that downward. Okay, now we're ready to weave in our ends. So if you did a yarn cake like me and let the yarn switch colors for you, you'll have 2 ends. If you put stripes in yourself, you may have some more ends than I did. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread our tapestry needle. And when we weave our ends in, we don't want to go into this blue area. We want to stay in the green area with the green tail because it'll stand out and not look as nice if you try to go into a different color. Okay, so we're just going to go in a little ways with our tail. And sometimes I like to twist side to side to get it through there. My tapestry needle is a little big for this project, but it still works. Okay, and then I like to come back in the other direction, and that'll help lock that tail into place. And then once you pull that through, be nice and gentle. Don't pull too hard. It'll distort your scarf if you pull too much. It'll kind of draw it in. And then you can just trim that tail off, and your tail is woven in on this side. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, it just so happened that we started and ended on green. So I've found with yarn cakes of the same colorway, sometimes your colors will be in a different order than mine. So if you buy the same exact cake in the same colorway, you might have different colors, a different order of colors, or you might start or end on a different color as well. Okay, so we're just bringing that tail in the other direction. And then we can just snip it, and our project is complete. So let's get this all laid out so we can see the whole thing. And again, this is a great first project. It's a simple, long rectangle, and it's super easy to whip up. And we let all of the yarn colors do the work for us. We didn't even have to switch colors. So that is how you make a knit scarf for an absolute beginner. And I've been knitting for many years, and I have to say I really enjoyed this project as well. So even if you've been knitting for a while or you've made a few projects under your belt, this is still a very fun project. And this is a project that I like to do if you're watching a movie in the dark, and if you've been knitting for a while, you can just knit stitches and not have to look down at your work so much. So this is a great project for either beginners or more advanced knitters as well. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.